time today. My name is Sam. I'm the owner of Blue House Books. You guys made it to the end. Thank you so much for being here. Whether you've been here all day, left and came back, we so appreciate you. It's a lot of work to plan these kinds of events, and today went so smooth. So I'm super excited about that. And thank you guys all so much for coming. It really means a lot to us. Indie bookstores are the best. I love my job. It's great. So thank you guys. All right, so we're going to get started talking about book-to-screen adaptations, and we have two authors here that are at very different points in their book-to-screen journey, so I thought that was cool to talk about, you know, what is it like when it happens, what is the process like getting started, and all of that. So we have Allie, whose book, My Life with the Walter Boys, was adapted into, it's a Netflix show, right?
Correct.
Okay, and then we have Bryn, who it's going to be a movie, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So just to get started, if you can both just say a little bit about what each of your books are about. I do want to ask, I do see one young one. Are we okay to talk about things and she won't understand?
She's not gonna.
Okay. Otherwise, do we have anyone else young in the audience? So do we have to be careful about what we say? Okay, I think we're good. Okay, Bryn, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So my book that's being adapted is Butcher and Blackbird. It is indeed being adapted to film. They've also acquired the rights to the second and third books as well. So it's the first book is the one that's been optioned, so they start with that and kind of see how they go. It is a dark romantic comedy about two serial killers who meet kind of by accident and end up becoming friends and then fall in love over an annual competition where they kill other serial killers.
Amazing.
Hi, I'm Allie, and I'm the author of My Life with the Walter Boys, which follows a affluent Manhattanite who, after losing her family, is forced to move across the country to live on a horse ranch with a family that has 12 kids.
Awesome. And so one of the reasons I wanted to do this discussion is that I feel like so many people don't realize everything that goes into like acquiring the rights for an adaptation. I have several author friends who like the rights got bought for an adaptation and then nothing ever happens. So there's just so much that goes into it. So the fact that these are both, are you technically in production yet? No, right?
We're in pre-production.
Pre-production. So even to actually make it that far is like, okay, this is actually going to happen. This is now where it's getting really exciting. But oftentimes it'll just kind of fizzle out and nothing will happen. So there's a lot that goes into it. So we were going to talk about that a little bit. But Allie, you were just mentioning, so you wrote this book a long time ago and it just recently got picked up. So how much time was there? Like, what was your journey, basically, to writing the book to having it adapted?
I wrote My Life with the Walter Boys when I was 15, and I posted it on Wattpad.
Yay!
And it got really, really popular on Wattpad, so a publisher picked it up. And it was published in 2014. But it wasn't until 2016 that the production company that produced it optioned it.
Yeah.
There was a long time period between when I first wrote the book and when it was finally optioned, and then another quite a few years before it actually hit Netflix. So, I mean, I'm 33 now, so I wrote it when I was 15 and it didn't come out until last year, so it's been pretty much half my life.
Yeah. And so do you feel like a disconnect?
Yes, 100%. One thing that people ask me, they ask, like, are you upset about the changes that were made between, you know, the book and the adaptation? And for me, not much, because it's been so long. I think if I had just written the book, I would feel much more connected to the story, but I wrote it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So just to see something that I wrote as a kid was surreal versus like me being upset because they weren't similar, and it really kind of revitalized the story because again it was published in 2014. It did well, but it's done so much better now that there's a show with it. So it didn't upset me. In fact, there were quite a few changes that readers pointed out to me that they were upset. You know, someone said, "Oh, in the book this happens, but in the TV show this happens," and I'm like, no it didn't, and I literally had to open my own book and I'm like, oh wait, they're right, this is how it happened in the book. So like it's been so long that it really hasn't bothered me.
Yeah, and I feel like that's another thing that readers don't always understand. Like, so I have a friend who she's working on her 4th and 5th book, but she'll still have book club requests for book 1. And she's like, I listen to the audiobooks once a year so that she can like even remember what happens in her own book. So there's a big gap. And, you know, even if it had gotten picked up right away, you know, it takes a year or 2 or 3, you know, for it to actually, so yeah, there's quite a time frame in between there. But Bryn, you're just at the beginning of your journey. So tell us a little bit about like when you first wrote the book and how long it's been and what the journey's been to kind of when you got that call that this was happening.
Yeah, so it was mid-August of last year when I first self-published the book, and at first it was kind of like normal for me release, like I didn't have a big following or anything like that, and I just kind of like put it out there. And then about 2 weeks afterwards, it really exploded on TikTok and got really big really fast. And I was getting a lot of inquiries from foreign rights publishers that wanted to buy the rights, and then I got an agent, and then as soon as I got an agent and we started submitting it and getting it, you know, into traditional publishers, we kicked off the process for entertainment rights. So what happens is, for me anyway, I have a literary agent and she co-agents with 2 entertainment agents. So they set up all of the, like, they basically gave the book to other people that they thought were interested potentially, and in some cases we had some inquiries where it was like people randomly like in the industry then hearing the buzz about the book and like picking it up and wanting to like going that route, so they contact like my agents and say, hey, I want to throw my hat in the ring for this.
Did they auction it?
Yeah, essentially, yeah, we did. Yeah, so we had like so many conversations. Chris McKay, who is attached to be the director, was actually the first person I spoke to. That would have been in like October of last year. And then we had conversations with producers. We had an actress who had a production company. We had multiple screenwriters. So we had a ton of conversations and kind of whittled it down to 3. And then basically had an auction. So 2 were wanting to produce it for TV. And then Chris wanted to produce it for film. But what is kind of interesting about the process is like people were at different levels, right? Like Chris, when he first threw his hat in, like he didn't have financing. So he had to be able to battle it out in this auction, he actually had to find that in time for when we were gonna like have this conversation. Okay, now it's time to give us your offers, right? There were screenwriters who were kind of in the same, like they would have had to put together a pitch, and there were producers like Lionsgate and Sony, and they have like huge amounts of money behind them already, right? So they're already ready to go. So it's like really weird that the people that you're talking to are not on the same playing field. So, but we had the auction, and then it's kind of a bit of comparing apples to oranges when you're like looking at film to TV. Because the whole structure of their offer is totally different. And I just felt like, then it came down to like really a creative decision. Like, who do you think, like, what do you want to see? Do you want to see a movie or do you want to see a TV series? Because it could go either way. And then who do you resonate the most with? So, and Chris, I just felt like he and the other producers like just had the passion and the vision for it that I felt best represented the book.
Okay, so you were able to be pretty well involved in the decision making and everything?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and the interesting thing was too, like when I was first starting out the conversations, my agent was like, look, I'm gonna level with you. Like a lot of the times when you go into these conversations, they're gonna say, we wanna buy the rights, and then you go off and go away. And you're not going to be involved. And she's had those conversations, and she's had them where they've not gone well. That wasn't my experience. Like I had everyone I talked to was like, this is how I envision us working together. And Chris was the first one I talked to, and so it was like the first time I broached the question was like, how involved would I be able to be? I don't want to step on people's toes. I want to see what your vision is going to be of the book, because that's fun for me too. But like, how involved can I be? And he's like, no, I want you like on the set. I want you to go to the editing room. I want you to like go and hang out with the stunt guy. Like, be involved. Like, yeah. So that was really refreshing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And Allie, how involved were you in your process?
Not quite as much as that. When I optioned it, there was only 2 companies that were interested in it. And I ended up going with, they were called Comics, their name has changed since. because one of the companies, like you were saying, saw it as a movie.
Yeah.
And then the one that I went with, they saw it as a TV show. And because the story started as serialized fiction, I thought the format of TV fit the story better than a movie. So they just saw the project more how I did.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I did not have the same kind of control that it sounds like you have. I very much did. I sold my rights. With that being said, because it was such a small production company, the creative director for the company, she was the one that developed the entire series for TV, and she became my point of contact. So the lady who created everything was the one who I was going back and forth with the whole time. And then after they sold it to Netflix, they liked her so much that they kind of poached her, and she left her company and she became the showrunner for Netflix. So she's the one who developed everything, and she was the only one that I talked to on a regular basis. And while I couldn't say like, hey, this is who I want cast, or hey, we should do this, if they were going to make a change, she would run it by me, and I would say 60 to 70% of the time, I would say, hey, I'm not sure this is the right move, and they would listen to me, but you know, there were changes that I didn't necessarily agree with.
Yeah. Because technically, once they buy the rights, they can kind of do whatever they want with it. It's just out of respect. Hopefully 60, 70, 80% of the time they will consult with you, you know, just, you know, a respect thing. You don't want bad publicity in that way, I'm assuming.
Right. It also depends, like, are you a producer?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was not a producer, but my other book series is being turned into a TV show as well, and I'm an executive producer on that. So hopefully, they're still like very early development, but hopefully I'll have a little bit more control.
Okay. Do you think you'll ask for that? Like, do you think you're in a place where you can be like, hey, I wasn't as involved the first time, I want to be this
Well,
time?
that was exactly why I was allowed that, because the Netflix show did so well.
Okay. Amazing. Well, congrats, actually. I didn't know you had another one in the works. That's exciting.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Cool. So now, Bryn, you're obviously not in this case yet. How was it? Like, seeing it be adapted?
Surreal.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever imagined as a 15-year-old something that I was writing in class instead of paying attention to my teachers. Like something that I was writing just for fun. Like I never imagined it on screen. I think because there was such a big, like, there were so many years between when I wrote it and when it was adapted that it didn't upset me when I saw things that were different. It was half my life ago, so I've moved on. With that being said, I definitely cried when I walked onto some of the sets. Like there were some sets that I was like, oh, like this is right out of my head. So that was really interesting.
That is so cool. What a cool experience. Awesome. And now, Bryn, are you able to give us any inside scoop about what's happening with yours? Where are we at in the process? Is there anyone on the list of being cast yet, or who would you love? What can you tell us?
So
what we talk about in this room stays in this room. Don't get me in trouble.
So we're off to a really good start. Like we're on or ahead of kind of schedule. With the configuration, it's like a very small production company, so they're able to kind of like move along really quickly. So our next step in the process was to find a screenwriter, and we have done that now. It hasn't been officially announced, but should be in the next couple of weeks. So they're just negotiating the contract with her, and she's already kind of like starting. So I've met with her already. So she's starting to kind of like write, and then the next step from beyond that. So she should be done December, early quarter one.
That's soon.
Yeah, and then we'll start, like, we'll refine that script and everything, and then, like, use that to attract talent. So I do know the director has, like, given the book to a few people. He's worked, like, in terms of actors, I guess. So he was the director for the Tomorrow War, for Lego Batman, for Renfield. He's worked most recently with Nicholas Hoult on Renfield, so he's given him the book, and I guess we'll just kind of like have to see. I think the biggest challenge will be to get the chemistry right, because it's so critical to making this work as a film. So it kind of depends on who like expresses interest and then who seems to work well together.
Did you guys have a conversation of like, because I'm sorry, I haven't read your book, but I've heard pretty gory and pretty smutty.
Yeah.
So have
Smutty,
we had that conversation?
Oh, yeah.
We want it all there? Are we gonna, that's what y'all wanted to hear, I know.
And he's definitely done a lot of like gory stuff before, so Renfield is pretty like, there's a lot of action in that and stuff. And then the smutty scenes, like they want to get, you know, it's like partly about intimacy and how you portray that, but like without taking everything out of it, you know. But the I think the gore is going to be like pretty easy for them. And the stunt coordinator has been identified and is on board, and he's actually read both that book and the second book, and he's been hounding for the third book. So yeah, he's ready to go. I think he's like got a vision of what he wants to achieve. So.
Amazing, that's so cool. So Allie, can you tell us a little bit about your next book that's being adapted that you mentioned?
Yeah, so there's another one that started on Wattpad, and it kind of has a funny backstory. So at the time when I was writing on Wattpad, there was no like genre category for fan fiction. So like when you're writing a story online, like you can usually tag it as this is romance, or this is YA, or this is horror. Well, there was no category for fan fiction. And One Direction exploded. And so all of a sudden everyone was writing like smutty fan fictions about Harry Styles, and nobody could find my original stories because it was getting buried under all of these One Direction fan fictions. So I got fed up and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write an anti-fan fiction story. So I created a fake boy band and I slapped Harry Styles' picture on the cover, and the rest is kind of history because the story blew up, it did really well. So the series is about a world famous boy band, and each book is told from their potential love interest's point of view.
Oh. And just in case anyone doesn't know what Wattpad is, can you explain that?
It's an online reading and writing platform. Anyone can sign up, it's free. There's millions of stories that you can read for free. It has definitely evolved since I wrote on the platform. There's a lot of paid content now. They have their own publishing house, so like stories that do really well get picked up and published through them. But yeah, it's a really fun place to find free content.
Yeah. And what I think is so great about it, like as a bookseller, I have a love-hate relationship with a lot of like self-published books that go viral and then become really popular, only because then they don't always get professional book treatment, which I don't think was the case for yours, which is so wonderful to hear either of yours. But I've seen some books literally just get like copied and pasted, and not all good writers are good editors, or not all good storytellers are good writers. And so as a bookseller, I'm like, I know this is TikTok viral, but it's crap. But I still have to sell it, you know? But so it's really nice to see so many people that I think might not have been discovered otherwise being able to use these types of platforms to then, you know, get attention and, you know, get so much fan following that they then get picked up by publishing companies. It's so cool to hear, because you guys are kind of both on that level where you self-publish and Wattpad basically is self-publishing. So yeah, you guys both were kind of on that journey and got picked up, and now it's going really well. It's so exciting. That's a very cool journey.
And I think it's great to have those platforms. Like Wattpad is such a great platform, exactly like you described. Like it's got so much, you know, so many resources to connect authors, aspiring authors with each other. And there is historically so much gatekeeping in traditional publishing. So there are many great, like really unusual stories that appear on platforms like that would never have an audience otherwise, but they get an audience, and then they get the attention they deserve. And I think especially for like underrepresented populations or people that wouldn't typically have access, like this is their gateway into a whole industry that before never reflected them.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a huge advantage for everyone who's like a reader and wants to read more like diversely and read different stories that just never would have appeared.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, I learned more about writing from writing online than I ever did when I went to school for writing. It was just, you got out there and you did it, and you had, it's writing serialized fiction is very different than writing a traditionally published novel, because you have instant feedback versus writing a regular book, it's a very solitary process. But when I was writing on Wattpad, I would post a chapter, and then in 24 hours, I would have 500 plus comments from people all around the world saying what they liked, what they didn't like, and I often would change how the book was developing based on those comments. Like if someone guessed where I was going with the plot, I'm like, well, nope, you're wrong, because it's not happening anymore. So I learned a lot more from that than I ever did in school.
That's amazing. That's so cool. And since we're just kind of on that topic, a little off topic from our main discussion, but do you guys read your reviews? Like,
Not
do you
anymore.
read reviews on Goodreads?
Like,
Or
I get
that
tagged
things like
in sometimes I get tagged in negative stuff too, but like I get tagged in a lot of reviews, so I'll read, a lot of the times I'll read something I'm like tagged in.
Yeah.
I actually have my lovely husband, like whenever I publish a new book, he'll go through anything that's like a negative, because I won't touch those at all, I don't want to read them. And he'll kind of see, is there anything that I'm missing? Like, is there something that is glaring that I didn't understand, or is it just really like, you know, some people will like your book, some people won't.
Yeah,
like,
My
is it
husband
something
can do
I
that for
can
me
learn?
now.
Filter out all the bad ones, only keep my
Spoiler alert, there's not typically much that
Yeah.
comes out. It's just like, you know, it's just, I resonate with the book or I don't. So, which is fine. But I don't want to like, even going through the editing process and having like alpha or beta readers and ARC readers, like you just worry that you might miss something critical that you just like everybody was blind to, and all of a sudden like bam. So we do that, but otherwise I try and like, I think it's healthier to stay away.
Platforms like Goodreads are designed for readers, not authors.
I was just going to say that.
It is for readers to find books and see what other people think about them. It is not for authors to read, because it doesn't matter how amazing of a book you write. Not everyone is going to love it. That's art in general. So I don't think it is healthy to read your reviews. With that being said, every once in a while, someone will tag you in a negative review, and it's just like, you don't need to tag me.
Yeah.
And oftentimes
I'm a real
it's like,
person.
I didn't like this because the character was 15 and I'm 40. I'm like, well, it's geared at 15-year-olds, so I can't help you there.
We have an author friend who just put it really similarly. She said, you know, reviews are for readers, not for writers. It's for you guys to talk about my book without me being in the conversation, basically, which is so true. It could be the best book in the world, but someone's not going to like it. It's inevitable. So I'm always happy when author, but then I have one that's like, I love it. I'm trying to remember who it was. Maybe Lane Fargo. I forget who it was, but there was one author that we did an event with who she was like, I love it. The negative ones, positive ones, I just sit there and laugh. And I was like, you have a strong mental health situation going
Some
on
authors
there.
use their negative reviews as promotion. Like I've seen some authors use that negative, just brilliant promotion. But one thing that I do, like if I do get tagged in a negative review, one thing that I do is I will search my absolute favorite books and I'll read the negative reviews there, because like it just goes to show you like you can love a book so much and there's always going to be someone who disagrees with you.
It helps to put it into perspective, because like I don't know if you feel the same, but like writing is like magical, and the more that you let other people's perceptions of your work kind of infiltrate that, and the more it kind of depletes the magic of it. It makes it harder to write. Like, because then these things stick in your head. You could read like 10 positive things and read one negative one
is going to stick in your head.
Exactly. So.
Well, it sounds like you guys have a really good healthy grasp on that, so I'm glad to hear that.
I mean, say that out loud.
All right, so now, Bryn, when you answer this question, let's all keep in mind that this is in no way a leak of what will happen, but I would love for you guys to tell us your dream casting of how you would feel about your books and the actors you think that would bring them to life. And Allie, maybe you can use your new one. As an example, since we don't want to insult the ones who are already adapting, your first book, that'd be rude, but who would be your dream casting?
I do think that Nicholas Hoult would do a really good Rowan. He can do this like vulnerable, he has this vulnerable side of himself, and then he can do a lot of the action stuff. So if you've ever seen like Warm Bodies, he was really good in that. He was really good in Renfield. Like he's played like such a range of characters, and he's amazing in The Great, which was a series that was just recently canceled, unfortunately. But I think he's really talented. And then for Sloane, I think it's a lot harder. I kind of think Amber Midthunder would be really cool. She was in Prey, so she is an Indigenous actress, American actress, but like really expressive, like really badass, like very cool. Also very very hardcore. So in Prey, she's like literally taking down the Predator, which is like, I'm a huge Predator and Terminator fan. Or maybe like Jenny Ortega or something like that.
She's having her moment. That would make sense.
Yeah, but it's gotta be like two people that jump. So.
Yeah, you definitely gotta make sure, like they might be great individually, but you have to make sure they have good chemistry. That makes sense. Allie, I see you thinking over there.
Yeah, I'm like sitting here racking my brain, and I'm not entirely sure, because I mean, I knew going into Walter Boys that I would not have any control over the cast. And I think that mindset just kind of followed me to this one. I honestly haven't gotten that far into like thinking about a potential cast. To be honest, for me, I think the most important thing is chemistry. And you know, I wouldn't be opposed to a unknown cast, like having someone, a fresh face that no one has seen before. Because unfortunately, I think a lot of people who have read this book previously, I think they picture Harry Styles, which was not the intention. Like I was just trying to get people to click on the book when I put his picture on the cover, but I think that's where a lot of people's minds go because of that. So a fresh face would be nice.
Yeah. Okay. And now, for you guys personally, and in the conversations you've had with other authors, is this like the dream? Is this like every author's goal is to get picked up for an adaptation? Or like, how did you feel about it? Do you have author friends who have mixed feelings about it? Is this like a huge goal for a lot of authors? What do you guys think?
There was a lot of questions in that one.
Yeah, it was. More just like, I just feel like a lot of readers probably are like, oh, this must be everyone's dream come true to have their book adapted. Is that true?
I mean, I think I have, for me personally, I have a lot of dreams as an author. I think the biggest one is just to continue being able to write books and to use that to keep the lights on. I have a checklist of things that I want to do, and definitely having a TV show was one of them. I think it depends. It differs for different authors. I've had authors who've had adaptations of their books and have like been horrified and cried and did not have a good experience.
Yeah.
But I can't say, I don't think there's any author out there who doesn't want to see their book become a TV or movie show. But I do think there are goals beyond that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's definitely been like a dream of mine to see something that I've written and put onto screen, and I'll give you like very specific examples, but I remember going to see Lord of the Rings in the theater, and when the Balrog came up, I was just like, I was so mind blown, because it was like, that is exactly the way I pictured the scene, like in my head when I read the books, and it's like, I would love to have that experience as an author one day. So getting to have that it is amazing, but it's weird how like when you're in these discussions with different potential partners, it becomes very much like compartmentalized, I guess, and it like is very worky kind of, because like for my day job I spent a lot of time on the phone, on calls, on Zooms and like Teams meetings, and then it was more of the same, and it's sort of like sometimes you kind of sit there and you're like, I just spoke to Chris McKay who directed the Tomorrow War. That's really weird, you know. And I kind of like I have a minute of being like, that's very strange. But then it kind of goes back into this like all the steps that you need to do to get there, and I don't know if it doesn't seem as much of a like dream when you're in the middle of kind of like doing it, and it's like chunking it out into all the tasks that have to be done.
Because it's just work.
Yeah.
It is work. It is more work. Yeah.
I mean, you can say the same thing about writing. Like, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be an author, but that's very different than having that actually be your career.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, when I was a kid, I was writing for fun, and now it's, oh man, I have to sit down and I have to,
Yeah.
I don't want to write this scene.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely changes the way you look at it. Not to say at the end that it isn't, you know, like a dream come true, like you were saying, to like, to see what you originally created be brought to life, but I don't want to say that it's less magical, but you know, anything that, you know, is work related, it's not always magical.
Maybe seeing it for the first time will feel different, but that might be the difference. But even like finishing a book, I feel like I had this perception when I was like finishing about to finish my first book, like, wow, I'm gonna feel so, I don't know, like I have accomplished something. And actually what I felt was really sad, because I was like, oh dang, the characters are done. That's not cool. And then it happened again. It happens every book now. So it's like, oh, I don't feel the way I thought I was going to feel.
Yeah, it's different from, I feel like, probably what a lot of people might imagine, because it is work, but it is also like an emotional journey you've been through. So yeah, I imagine there's a lot of mixed feelings there.
Yeah, there's highs and lows too. Like there's the call that you get that it's happening.
Yeah.
And then you'll have this eventually too, you finish watching it and it's over.
Right.
Those are two very different feelings.
It's like you more prefer the anticipation to it than it actually happening. Like, I'm happy that it happened, but I'm sad that it's over.
Right.
That makes total sense.
And another thing for me too was, you know, the book was optioned, but I didn't think that it would get to where it did. So a lot of the time throughout the process, I wouldn't allow myself to get excited because I didn't want to get let down when it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So by the time it finally happened, it was like, wow, this happened. I didn't think this would happen. So I kind of, I don't want to say I numbed my emotions, but I really kind of tried to keep the excitement down because I didn't want to be let down.
Yeah, absolutely. That would have been like so depressing. But that is how it goes for a lot of authors. So this is amazing that your two projects have made it this far. So kudos to you two for writing stuff that the fans love and it being enough to make it this far. That's so awesome. Very cool. Yeah, anything else that you want to say about kind of where you are in the stage of like the production of it for either of you, for your new one or for where you are? I know we went over it, but anything we missed in terms of like what are you working on right now for it, for the adaptations?
Well, I'm kind of in the in-between. I'm working on a sequel to The Walter Boys currently, but because there wasn't a sequel when they developed the first season, the second season of the show and the second book are not going to align. They made a lot of changes in order to create longevity. So like, if the show does well, we have potential content for a second and third season. So they're filming the second season, and I have no clue what it's going to be. I won't know until it drops on Netflix.
Wow. So you're like not involved at all in
No,
season
because
two?
it's not content that I created.
Wow. I'm surprised that they won't even still just like...
I mean, I'm sure if I called Melanie is the showrunner, I'm sure if I called her out, I'm like, hey, what's going on? She would give me an update.
Sure.
But I'm just going to let them do their thing.
Okay.
And the other one, The Heartbreak Chronicles, it's still early development. So like they're not anywhere where I'm involved yet.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, mine is still, like, it's still pretty early, right? Like, I've been involved, like, when they were making the selection of the screenwriter, so, I might have had a deciding vote, I'm not sure. I wasn't, like, in the initial meetings with the screenwriter because it wouldn't be, like, appropriate. It wouldn't be, like, where they felt like they would be able to give their full pitch without me like being there, and I think it wouldn't have been right. So I received all the notes afterwards and had a lot of discussions with the director about like, oh, we're leaning towards this one or this one, or what do we think, and you know, this is what they've sort of pitched, and yeah, so I think we're still in early days now. I'm connected directly with the screenwriter, so as she's starting to write, I'll be like available for answering any questions and stuff. And then I guess, yeah, we're just kind of like trucking along. So yeah, early, but it's going pretty fast. I think they're hoping to start filming ideally at the end of next summer. And then release the next year. So it's unconfirmed, but the whole goal would be to release it for like Halloween.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that fall.
So like a year from now, hopefully?
Well, we'd film 2025
Okay.
and then it would release in 2026.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so still quite a journey ahead. So I'll ask you, Bryn, what are you most excited for in this process? And Allie, what was the most exciting or fun part of the process?
I want to play the mummy. I keep saying this, like, I want to play Mummy Mead. I want to play the mummy. I don't know. I just want to see, I want to learn. I want to see how everything works.
You learn a lot.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I love learning new things, and I just want to be able to see it all sort of come together. And then, yeah, really looking forward to that first time, like, actually seeing it on a screen. It's going to be super exciting. So.
Awesome.
I think for me it was definitely the set, like visiting set and, you know, seeing the different ways they brought it to life. Because like when I went to set, it wasn't just like, here, meet the cast and here's the ranch that we built. We got to go to like the creative department and see like all of the storyboards they did for each scene. And we got to walk through the costume department and see all of the outfits that they put together. And it really goes to show you like how much work and how many people are involved in bringing something to life. It's not just someone behind a camera filming the actors and actresses. There's so much that's involved. So it was really cool to see that process. And then also obviously getting to watch it when it finally came out.
Amazing. All right, well that pretty much ran through my questions. Is there any questions from anyone out in the audience? And just a heads up that they might not be able to answer certain things, but yeah.
Were either of you considered or in the running for being your own screenwriter?
No. And I had no interest.
Good.
I am an overwriter. I tend to write too much, and I think writing a screenplay is the opposite of that. You have to tell the story in a very concise way because you only have so much screen time. So I don't think I could ever do that. So zero interest.
And I never expressed any interest. Like, I've expressed interest in wanting to learn it because I wanted to learn something new. And I have another friend who's a screenwriter, but the format is very different from the way that I see, like, because I have to be able to see the scene and transmit it onto a page, right? And it's just the way it's sort of chunked out in a screenplay. It doesn't jive with the way that I need to write. Probably a bit like you, like, it needs to flow and it feels too broken up. So I don't think at this stage, like, I want to learn how it's done and understand it better, but I don't know if I'll ever want to actually do it, you know? So I was like, no, you wouldn't want me to do that.
Yeah.
No experience. So.
Awesome. Anyone? Yeah.
Is there, in your process of writing, is there ever a point where you're like, if this goes to screen, I want to make sure this is in there, or are you just writing to write a book, and then if it happens, it happens?
That is a good question. For me, it was just I'm writing to write a book, and I see it like a movie in my head. So, but I didn't write to think like, oh, I want to write it like this so that it could be adapted for screen. No, it was just like, this is the visual thing I'm seeing and trying to put it down in a way that other people will consume it in that same sort of manner. Yeah.
Very similar answer. Writing to write. With that being said, I do think there are scenes that you know that readers connect with more than others, that you can see very clearly in your head and that you know how you would like to see it on screen, but not necessarily like when you were writing it, you were writing it to see it on a screen.
Yeah.
So.
Now, do you think that's changed now that you are having something adapted and not had something adapted, or you're still just writing to write?
Writing to write.
Yes.
I think it would be very, I mean, I suppose some people do, but I think it would be hard to write a book specifically to have it adapted. I think I mean, when you watch any book to screen adaptation, think about how many changes happen. It's just a different form of storytelling. So to adapt my own form of storytelling to a different format, like I don't know, it would feel clunky.
Yeah, agreed.
So for a self-published author, what's the best way for them to get an agent or to get the process started?
So that's hard for me to answer because I did not have a traditional route to publishing. Like I thought that I would have to, you know, go to college, get a regular job, and like write on the side, like write a ton of manuscripts until an agent eventually picked me up. But it was very backwards for me. I wrote online, the stories got really popular on, you know, the writing platforms versus like say TikTok. And because of that success, it attracted a publisher and it attracted an agent versus me having to go out and find one. So I don't have any experience with that.
Okay.
I'm in a similar boat because what happened with Butcher and Blackbird is that when it was blowing up and other publishers like internationally were starting to take note of it, they were contacting me directly and saying like, we want to make an offer for this country, who's your agent? And I was like, I don't have an agent. And finally somebody kind of took pity on me and was like, how about I recommend someone for you to contact? And he gave me my current agent's name. So I reached out to her, like typically there is a querying process, right? I didn't follow any of that and I said that explicitly in my email to her. I was like, I know I'm not doing this right. Like I know everything about what I'm about to say is probably backwards and not following any process. So again, I think similarly, because I was writing and like putting it out and then got noticed, it's a bit different than the journey that a lot of people seem to follow. However, I have seen a lot more of this happening lately, is that books that have garnered some success as a self-published book have then like been picked up for traditional publishing. So that's
So
many,
So many.
like yeah, so many. Especially within the last like year and a half. It's just a load of them. So
as a bookseller, I can confirm that. And I'll also tell you that just from hearing like how other authors have done it, I don't know if it's the same now that it's X, but Twitter was actually a huge place that a lot of people were finding agents. And that
They have like pitch, I
competitions,
forget what it was called, but
yeah.
like you would like pitch to different agents like in a single tweet.
Yep.
What is my book? And like
Yeah.
agents would have like, I'm looking for a middle grade adventure or whatever genre that agent looks for, and you would pitch to them. There was like a specific.
There's like a hashtag
Yeah,
for
I don't
but
remember what it's called though.
And again, I don't know if it's the same now that it's X or if Threads, which is like the Instagram competition to that, is doing it, but definitely check that out in terms of a way of just trying to like solicit to like kind of in a mass way, or finding agents that are looking for certain authors or things. But otherwise, it's really just a matter of Googling literary agents, see what they're looking for, and sending them a pitch. You know, it's a process. I actually have an author friend who had to redo it. Her I believe it was that her agent left her agency, and no one else had the availability to pick her up, and she had to start all over, and she went to Twitter. And that's how she found a new agent.
Her agent didn't take her with?
No, I don't really know what happened in terms of why the agent left, if they got fired or left the industry or something. But yeah, it was a nightmare. I felt so bad for her. But yeah, I just know that that's a popular space for authors to try to find those connections. Okay, we might have time for one more question if anyone has anything. Yeah.
It's unrelated to Scream, and I know they're two completely different books, but how did both of your storylines come about?
The inspo.
A lot of different places. I was, at the time that I wrote it, there were a few teen TV shows that were really popular. Gossip Girl, The Vampire Diaries, took inspiration from those. I also, the story features a really large family. Because I've always loved Yours, Mine, and Ours and Cheaper by the Dozen were like two of my favorite movies when I was a kid, and I really wanted to like replicate that big family feel. So lots of different media forms. TV, movies, a few books too.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit from everything.
Okay.
Yeah, it's similarly actually. I love old school horror movies and British comedies, like Hot Fuzz is one of my all-time favorite movies. So when I started writing Butcher and Blackbird, I started with the first chapter and a half, and then I wasn't like, it has quite a crazy opening. But I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. And then I just got this like visual of a scene that was almost like an homage to Texas Chainsaw, and was like, okay, bang, I'm going to write that. So that skipped way ahead, and I wrote that scene, and then I wrote like, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna like make an homage almost to another like favorite horror film. So I like drew a lot of inspo from favorite old school horrors that I loved. And kind of like melded it all together. I don't typically write in a
I was
linear
gonna
fashion.
say, oh my, I really?
No, yeah, I bounce all over the place.
I can't do that. I have to go first scene all the way to the end.
I've only met one other person so far that does it like with this like weird non-linear fashion.
So I have a question for
Yeah.
you. So for me, I can't move on to the next scene until I finish the first. For you, is it like, these are the scenes that I can see in my head, so I'm gonna put them down?
Yeah.
So my question is, do you then have a hard time writing the scenes that don't come to you immediately? Like, almost like the connecting scenes? Because like for me, like the scenes that I see in my head are the ones that I'm most excited to write. So if I write all the fun scenes first, I'm not gonna wanna go back and write the scenes in between.
Sometimes, but what ends up happening.
Will be closing in 15 minutes.
What happens often though is I'll like write those big scenes and then I'll like realize what it is that I need to do to connect it to
Okay,
those. But
that's
the more
fair.
visual, yeah.
Esperamos tu ver, verte pronto.
It's gonna do that 2 more times.
Yeah, okay. Well, actually, I was going to say, I think that wraps us up for here today. So if you want to quick get either of their books signed, we're here for a couple more minutes. So if you wanted to get one of their books that you hadn't gotten before, grab those quick. We can do a couple little last minute signings, but then otherwise, that's our event. Thank you guys so much, and thank you.
Thank you.